So excited for us to be together, and welcome online guests. Welcome for being here live. And if you're watching later on, we're super excited that you have chosen to take the time to come in and listen to the conversation today. This week on Simply Sarah, I have such a special guest. I met Craig Tomanini just a few years ago, and we were at a conference together, the Achieve Conference, and it was just so incredible to meet somebody who was like-minded, who has such a passion for business and also specifically for entrepreneurs. And so I'm going to bring him in and add him to our conversation here. Craig, it is so exciting to see you, and I just am super excited about this conversation because I know that you have written some books, that you have an incredible website, and that you are impacting lives on an incredible level. And I would just love for you to share a little bit of your background and how you got to the place that you're at today.
Oh my gosh, thanks Sarah for having me on. It's so exciting. And first of all, congratulations on everything that you've done, because I've watched your journey unfold, especially recently, and just super proud of everything you've accomplished. Yeah, I'm very excited to be on here today, particularly because of the conversation that we're going to have. My background, it's pretty extensive. I mean, I always have a hard time finding a place to start, but I guess I'll start more recent than I normally do, and we'll save the meat for later on. I'm a technology business coach. I kind of happened into that occupation. Prior to that, I was a veteran of 30 years in the information technology space, specifically software testing and software programming. And I made a good career of that, and I've lived a great life with that from an income standpoint. But I always tell people I've always had a day job on the side. And the reason I say it that way is because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had businesses all the way back until, as far as I can remember, I think age 13 was where it started. And I've always just had a passion for entrepreneurship. My mother was a single mom, and she raised me, and she worked her butt off trying to provide for us. And a lot of that meant having a day job or a straight job. And she also had, entrepreneurial endeavors that she did, everything from, restaurants in all kinds of things. And so it just rubbed off on me. And so when I decided to make a shift into what I'm doing now, it was really, the genesis of it was really just wanting to help entrepreneurs figure out a better way to scale their businesses. And that's where I started. And then kind of coupling that together with my technology background, realized that one of the biggest areas of opportunity for people in business to grow is just this education idea from a technology standpoint, really understanding how it works, why some people do so well with it and why some don't, why some people charge so much for it and some people don't. I really wanted to bridge the gap for people. I wanted to empower entrepreneurs to take control of their business from that perspective as well. And business is really good. And that just means that there's a lot of people that need help with their technology. And, that coupled with, my background, I guess I go back 14 years from here. I gave my life to the Lord 14 years ago. And that was a massive part of the transformation and the redemption. In terms of how I approach business, everything changed. Of course, my life completely changed, but then I had to take a step back, even in business, and look and go, how do I conduct myself, right? What does it look like to be in relationship with people, with my clients, with people that I work with directly? What does money look like now? Like, can I still earn money? And there was just so many things that were revealed to me. And so I've kind of in parallel spent the last 4.5, 5 years now really documenting that process and understanding what God has to say about how we do business. And the two things together have just created this unbelievable, only as God could do, this unbelievable explosion in my life and in my business and everything. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Craig, I'm so excited that you were sharing not only about being raised by a single mom and her having these aspirations for more and being able to see that there was the possibility of that, because so many people are not raised with a parent or somebody in their life who sees that there can be more. They see it, the traditional education path. And I'm not going to speak down on education because I spent the last 35 years of my life in the classroom as an educator. And so there's a point and place for teaching people how to read and write. But I think that one of the components that we've taken completely out of this process in education is, we don't teach people to balance in a checkbook of any kind or use a balance sheet or have any kind of conversation about ebb and flow of money, and that there are different economics that are taking place. There's a spiritual economic where you can be investing seeds into people's lives with a heart-based entrepreneur business, and yet not necessarily see all the harvest come from that, but yet see the harvest in other areas as well. We don't have those kinds of conversations. And so I would love to hear from you, because I know that in part of our conversation, that concept of co-creating, that we are being given these beautiful ideas and then being able to take daily action towards those ideas, even with other people who may be, or circumstances that may be seemingly standing in the way. So as you look at how things have transformed for you, what would you say the biggest piece is as you are teaching and looking and sharing with newer entrepreneurs, people who are beginning to look at business from being heart-led, but also from a point of spiritually being led?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Go back. I guess the first thing I would want to share too, just kind of coupling off of your comment with regards to the education system. I have a daughter who's graduating in May to be a teacher, and I think there's probably not a more noble profession than someone who wants to teach, than someone who wants to provide a base of knowledge, right? So I love teachers and massive respect for teachers. That being said, I kind of share a similar opinion about the education system with you. I was in the public school system when I grew up because I had to be. We had to go where it was free. My mother certainly wasn't in a position to afford private school or anything like that, but we knew the value of education. And the thing that was interesting was my mother would always say, when I was growing up, I would get upset about things. She would say, Craig, there's always a way to get something done. There's never an excuse. Right. And that was something that really stuck with me, Sorry, I get a little emotional on that because my mother is no longer with us, but she left, she left a print on me. And, so she would say that all the time. And then I had this one educator and it was in middle school, which was a really interesting time in my education career, if you will. And this individual was not only a reading teacher, but he was also a guidance counselor. And he became a really good, I don't know if it was a friend, but he was more than a teacher to me. He was more of a mentor to me. And he said something that really stuck with me, Sarah. And this is back a day or two. He said, the problem with the education system is that most people come here expecting to learn how to read, do math, social studies. It's topical based. And he said, the thing that I want people to learn is that when an educator does their job, what they've done effectively is they've taught the student how to learn.
Yes.
And that really has been a common thread my whole life. Going through school, the rest of my school career, I always remembered him saying that, like, it doesn't matter if I can do my times tables really fast. It doesn't matter if I can memorize some historical fact. What matters is if I can learn how to learn more effectively. And I just took it with me through my high school career, and I ended up going to a vocational school to be, I was going to be a tradesman because of my economic status. College wasn't even a consideration for us. And so my mother was like, you better find a way to make some money and get a real job. And, it was that whole older culture thinking, And so I was like, okay, well, I'll go to school and be a plumber. I'll learn how to be a plumber. And then because I had this innate entrepreneurial drive already from age 13 all the way through this time, I said, well, I definitely know already I don't want to work for somebody. I don't want a job. I'll get one if I have to, but I don't want to work a job. And so in my mind, I was like, I'll learn how to do plumbing and I'll open up my own plumbing business. That's what I was going to do. So I worked my butt off in high school and I graduated second in my class. There were 800 people in my shop, in my trade. I graduated number 2 out of 800. And the year that I graduated, all of the new home construction stopped in the United States. And the ripple effect was that no tradesmen were being hired. You couldn't get your apprentice hours in at a shop. You couldn't even work in a supply house. Nobody was hiring. So here I am. I'm 18 years old, graduated high school. I got all this knowledge and I couldn't do anything with it. And, to your point, information is as only valuable as you can apply it to something. And I found myself in this gap going, what do I do next? And I knew that in my mind at the time, college was the only other thing, but we couldn't afford it. So I went in the military. And even in the military, that same concept, the two things, my mother in one ear, there's always a way, there's never an excuse. And then my teacher, saying to me that, your job isn't to learn how to do that thing. Your job is to learn how to learn. And so here I am in the military, and I'm in this whole new environment of information and knowledge. And anyways, it's all part of a journey. And that's really what I'm excited about being in the position I'm in now, is I get to educate people the same way that those two people did, and saying, you know what, there's always a way that you can get this done. So don't make excuses. Really important. Don't make excuses. And then on the other hand, similarly, there's a way that you can educate yourself. You can learn if you know how to learn, you can teach yourself anything. And I have done so many things, Sarah, in my life. When I tell people, they go, how old are you? Because you've done this and you've done this and you've done this. And it's just because I don't believe that in the idea of making excuses. If I have to earn a living, if I have to make my way, then it's on me to educate myself. That means to get the knowledge. That doesn't require anybody else's participation. It's up to me to go find that information. And in the age that we live in now, there's just no excuse. I mean, I don't know how to work on this vehicle that I'm sitting in, this Toyota, and I wouldn't dream of doing it because it's like practically a computer. But then I'm like, wait, I could go on YouTube and I can learn how to at least diagnose what the problem is, so I don't go to a mechanic and get taken advantage of at an auto shop, right? So right. I don't know. I think I tangented all over the place there, but it's just that education part. It's a trigger for me because, I tell my kids all the time. They're like, "Oh, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this," and I'm like, "Then go figure it out. Like, it's all right there for you. Just go hunt for it." Oh, I remember what I was going towards. Your example of the bank ledger, the checkbook. Oh my gosh, I have been in debt my entire life up until 10 years ago. I'm going to be 51 years old in April. And I believe that the reason I'm in debt is because no one showed me how to balance a checkbook. Sarah, I never did it until 10 years ago. I didn't know what that page was for. I'm like, why are there so many? Is it like for notes? Seriously, like I had no idea what that was for. And my mother certainly didn't teach me anything because she was broke until the day she died. She died extremely in debt. And it was because she didn't know, she didn't have those tools. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that the education system, I don't want to down it either, because I think that there's a lot of valuable parts to it, right? I mean, certainly from a social standpoint nowadays, kids need to have role models in their lives. They need to have people that are speaking positively in life into their world, because so many kids are depressed and they're, and I don't mean from a clinical standpoint, because that's a whole nother topic, but like the whole idea of just diagnosing our kids and putting them in a box and just saying, go stand over there because the society doesn't know how to deal with you. They need people in their lives. They need educators. They need role models. And that's in school, and that's at home, and it's everywhere. But I think that they have a lot to learn. But I also think at the same time, and my wife taught me this lesson, so I have all these great mentors speaking to me, right? She said to me when we first met, she said, the problem that you have, Craig, really is that your expectations are way up here. And most people don't operate at the level of excellence that you perceive people to. She's like, you have to bring your expectations down, not your standards, but your expectations. And she said, and then you'll be a lot less disappointed in the performance of other people. And I guess that's true. But at the same time, I feel like we, the collective, have a responsibility to pour into other people and to bring it to the biblical level. I mean, God's very clear. The most important commandment is how you love your neighbor, how you treat other people. And we suck at that. We just generally suck at that as people. I mean, all the way back to the garden, we demonstrated that we can't follow direction. So, I mean, I don't know. I get crazy when I talk about this stuff, because it's just, it fires me up because it's so important, and I just want people to hear it.
Yes. And Craig,
I
so appreciate your passion for education, because what you are continuing to do in your life is that you are educating. You're educating entrepreneurs. You are showing them in our conversations. As I came with you with programs that I had created, you were like, Sarah, why are you looking at this so small? Why would you choose small when you can be impacting lives on a much different level? And here we are months after that conversation, and this is truly available to people all the way around the world. Simply Sarah, the show is everywhere if people are willing to look for it or source it or find the information. The education is there. And like you, I feel so passionately about giving energetic tools to people so that they don't feel stuck where they are, to get space of hope, that space of what's next. So we're going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back from our commercial break, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on what are these tools that we're talking about, and why would it be important to have a spiritual background or a spiritual place to plug in when you're building a business or when you are in business. We will be right back. So we're having a conversation today with Craig Tomanini, and he's talking about very, very passionately education and why as educators, why as entrepreneurs, learning to figure it out is so critical. I have to share with you that in my own journey, technology, I'm not a technology native. And I've finally gotten to a point where I'm able to say to myself, Sarah, you've got this, figure it out. And I love that Craig is part of that and teaching other people that same kind of thing of, don't get stuck. My saying my name is reminding me that I have the ability to begin to start working and figuring out what it is that I'm working on. So as I'm bringing Craig back in, we're going to have continue this conversation. This conversation, Craig, I'd love for you to talk about more specifically how have a foundation, it's a spiritual foundation, one where you believe in God and see these principles that are in place, these ancient principles, how they impact business. And before you begin sharing on that, I just want to share that our legal system is based on Moses' law, right? The Mosaic law is what people will go back to and say, this is how we're going to choose to build a society because it works. And so as you think about when you're training and talking to people who are entrepreneurs, people who are thinking about looking at their paycheck and saying, this isn't enough, I've got to find a way to do more. Why is it important for them to begin to have this conversation about what this looks like on the spiritual?
Wow. So, I mean, I have to thank you for the opportunity to even talk about this at this level because, well, frankly, most places don't really want to hear about it, right? When it comes to faith and the big G word, you know, it's like taboo. So I'm super appreciative and grateful that you're having me able to talk about this on your show. There's so many places that we could go in this conversation. I think I'll pull from a couple of my experiences to kind of make some reference points here. You know, one of them, you know, you brought up, one of them is money, right? When I started my entrepreneurial journey at age 13, there was no considerations to be made. I needed money. I found a way to make it, done deal. But I think that, you know, now as a believer and an entrepreneur, and, you know, my tagline is business built on faith. And I mean, if you want to put yourself into a precarious situation to walk the talk, then, you know, put that on a t-shirt and underneath your brand, because I'll tell you every single day, you know, I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now, like every single day I get asked, what does that mean? You know, what does it mean to build a business on faith? Does that just mean that you just believe that it's going to work? Yeah. I mean, there's an element to that, I guess. But for me, and I think for most that are in business, whether you're a believer or not, I think that there are a lot of things that we talk about in terms of money and relationships and various topics that whether we realize it or not are referenced from Scripture. You know, a penny earned is a penny saved. You know, like things like that. You know, that nobody really thinks about. You know, what goes around comes around, right? That's not karma. I mean, the Buddhists think that that's karma, and that's fine. But that's an eye for an eye, right? You think of those things. These are things that are extracted from the Word of God. And so when I think about how I conduct myself as a Christian who owns a business, and I'm saying it that way on purpose, I'm not a Christian business owner. I don't own a business that's a Christian business. I'm a Christian who owns a business. And I think because that's the case, I have to be very aware of all of the things, right? It's almost like this idea of being a pastor or being an elder, right? Someone who's in high leadership authority, and Scripture has lots to say about what the requirements and the standards are there. But I think that the one thing that's definitely proportionate to what I'm talking about is this idea of not being above reproach, right? If I'm going to establish a standard or adhere to a standard like faith in terms of my Christianity, I have to make sure that when I interact with people, I do it in a way that Jesus would have done it, right? And I think a lot about his walk on earth. I mean, this guy literally walked around on earth interacting with people, sinners, right? And what's one of the first stories you hear in Scripture is that he becomes buddies and pals with who? Matthew, the tax collector, of all people, the lowest of the low, the wretched of the wretched. That's his friend. He says, follow me. And Matthew picks up and follows him and leaves, all of the things that he has in terms of cushion in his life. There's a lot of lessons in that, right? One, of course, it doesn't matter who you are and what you've done. It's the way that you treat people going forward, right? You can always become better, right? It's that education piece. I can always learn to be a better person to other people. So there's that. And then there's the finance aspect of that. Matthew spent a lot of his time working for the Romans, collecting taxes, and taxed the people of God in an unjust way. And yet God saw fit to pick him because of his knowledge of finance. And if you unpack a lot of the lessons and the experiences of Matthew, if you read through that book in Scripture, you start to see these financial references, these financial guidelines for how you're to manage what you have, right? Being a good steward of what you have, not taking more than your share, allotting what is due to those that it is due to, and then allocating in a responsible way how to be a good steward with the providence that God has provided for you. And I can stop right there. I mean, that alone, in terms of running a business, one of the most common things that I run into with my clients is they say, I don't have enough money. And it's never, ever that they haven't generated enough revenue. It's that they've mismanaged what they've been provided. And so when you look at things like that in Scripture, I think it's really important to understand that all of that goes back to this idea of faith, right? If I'm going to operate a business and I'm going to trust and apply these principles, then I have to also, of course, trust that God is a sovereign God, which he is, and that he's in control of everything. And so if that's the case, which it is, then what am I worried about? I'm really just kind of an employee at the end of the day. I'm just really kind of working for the real CEO, right? God's the real CEO. And that was really, shameless plug, that was really the premise for my new book. It was like, I'm an entrepreneur, but God's really in the driver's seat. So my new book, GODpreneur, is all about these biblical principles that I've learned and extracted. And I tried to provide some commentary around how people could look at that in a practical way for their business. Because, like you said, it's really hard to be a Christian, period, and then to realize that you are a business owner, period. And then at some point, the two things have to come together, right? Semicolon, or whatever the punctuation is, right? Something has to join those two things together. And that is faith. That's what that word to me is all about when it comes to my entrepreneurship walk, right? Because the other part of it too is if people hear my words, right, and they watch this interview and they go, wow, that guy is a great orator, he's amazing and he's so in tune with God, and then I go out and I jack somebody out of their money, or I don't do what I say I'm going to do, I've now made God look bad. And Sarah, there are a lot of Christians out there, unfortunately, that do this. People are so quick to sell God or to use God as a marketing tactic. And I would caution you, if you are a Christian who is a business owner, be very careful walking that line, because God has things to say about that too. And so I don't know if I answered your question, but I can go deeper, but you tell me.
No, I so appreciate that. And your website, Ask Craig T, is fabulous. And I encourage people to go there. When they go there, what are they going to find?
So I try to break up my website and my business to be consistent really with the three main things that I focus on. And one of those, of course, is coaching from a technology standpoint. And then the other is I have a business services group. So a lot of times my clients will come to me and say, hey, I need a graphic designer, or, hey, do you know somebody who can do SEO, or can you do those types of things? And so I created a division in my company to be able to service those client needs, not necessarily the things that I don't want to do or can't do. They're just things that I think are better done so that I can stay focused on the coaching aspect of the relationship. And then the third thing that they will see is in my other line of business is speaking. I love to be in front of people. not from a narcissistic look at me perspective, because truthfully, I'm actually pretty introverted, which most people never believe, but I don't believe in being out in the front of the room unless it has a purpose, right? And so I speak because it's a mechanism for me to educate, right? It's a way for me to add value to other people's lives in a short format, right? Maybe they're never going to be a coaching client of mine, but on my website I have information for all of those things, and how people can check it out, and some samples where it's applicable. What I really was trying to accomplish with my website, though, Sarah, is just like everything else, just to add value, right? I wanted people to visit the website and go, huh, I know something I didn't know before I got here, right? And then if that, trips their hammer and they want to do something else, there's ways to do that. But thank you for featuring that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to take a commercial break here, but when we come back, I would love for you to share a little bit more about what does it look like when you're teaching or working with entrepreneurs or people who are trying to figure out how to move forward financially with what they do have, tools to be better stewards with that. Because what I'm really hearing you talk about in this segment, Craig, is that concept of stewardship. And for me, there comes along also side by side with stewardship, with the other parable that Jesus taught that Matthew really clearly shares, is that one about the person who goes out to sow seeds and is just their work, right? Just being faithful and consistent, doing what they are supposed to be doing. And yet not all of those seeds are going to spring up and grow and be super fruitful. A lot of them will, not all of them will. And so that expectation, not the standard. I love how you spoke about that earlier. Keeping your standard where it is, looking at your expectation, knowing that those words mean different things. Would love for you to talk about a little bit more about that. We'll be right back after this commercial. I am super excited about this conversation with Tomanini because we're talking about something that I think is just so critical. We don't teach certain things in education. I understand that as an educator, but also parts of this that I think are super important for us, things that we may be missing out, that I know that for myself and my own journey as an entrepreneur that I needed to start looking at differently. I understood a ledger sheet. I understood in terms of money coming in, money going out. That made sense to me. I understood paying taxes. That made sense to me. But the concept of stewardship was something that has taken me a while to wrap my brain around it. And we don't talk about stewardship a whole lot in terms of financially. We talk about it in terms of people being good stewards of the land or being good stewards of the things that they have been given, tools that they have, but not necessarily about being good stewards of the financial things that flow through our being and that flow through our businesses as we're building them. And so we bring Craig back in. He's going to be sharing a little bit more about that. And Craig, welcome back. I just would love for you to share more about that concept of stewardship, what that looks like as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, definitely. So before the break, you referenced One of my favorite scriptures, actually, it's John 4:37, and talking about, you reap what you sow. And it's another one of those sayings, right? It's another one of those things that people say, even if they're not followers of Christ. So I find that very interesting. And I guess there's a couple things around that I would bring up. And one of them is, you mentioned that sometimes, being a good steward of your land or the things that are given. It's important in business, before we get into the deeper part, to realize that sometimes everything's not about money, right? You had said earlier too, the seeds that you plant in people, and then there's a harvest that occurs, and you may or may not ever see the harvest. That's also part of that lesson of reaping and sowing, right? What are you putting in to another person or into another organization? And I'll share a story real quick. I did a video project for a nonprofit here in the town that I live in, and the woman came to me and said, I really want to do this. You were highly recommended. I know that you have the talents and the skills to get it done. And this is earlier on in business too. And I remember thinking to myself, this woman runs a nonprofit, very judgmental in my mind. It runs a nonprofit, she doesn't have any money. And it was wrong. That was wrong thinking of me, But then as we got into the conversation, I actually did learn that she had the capability and the resources to pay for the services and was totally willing to do it. But she did make a comment at one point and said, is there anything we can do? Because I do run a nonprofit, I'd like to be as economical as possible, right? And so that was that kind of like question you never want to hear as a business owner, hey, can you provide a discount? But, one of the things that I do as a man of faith and a business owner that has faith as a foundation is I often contemplate, with the Holy Spirit for guidance, because that's what the Spirit's for. Is he, is left behind to be the counselor, the great physician, the teacher, right? And so if you're not talking to the Spirit, especially in situations like that, so knowing that this woman was running a nonprofit that was a ministry, it was Gospel Homes for Women, and I said, would you just excuse me for a moment? I said, I'm just gonna step out for a moment. I said, I'll be right back. And she said, sure. And so I left and I came back into the room. And what I had done is I had gone and prayed in the Spirit. I said, give me guidance here. Give me wisdom. What should I do? What is it that you want me to do here? And it was a big challenge for me, because immediately I got this prompting, like, it wasn't do it for free. It was go back in and let this woman know that you're willing to work with her. That was what I got. And so I sat down with her and I said, I'm sensitive and compassionate to your situation. I said, I can only imagine how challenging it is to run a nonprofit and to want to get something like this valuable thing in place and know the impact it will have, but yet be financially responsible. And I said, I really respect you for that, for asking the question. I said, so here's my question to you. What exactly would make it easier for you to get this project on wheels? What can we talk about aside from money? And so she said, she looked right at me, Sarah. She said, well, she's like, if you could do it for this amount of money, it was a much less figure. She said, I will write you a letter of charitable donation from my nonprofit for 10 times that amount, which was way more money than I was going to make by almost 4 times. So if you figure out the math, I mean, it was, I looked at her and I said, sure, absolutely, let's do it. And we did it, and it's been a great relationship. And she has come back as a client now several times because she knows how I operate. And on the way out the door from that meeting, she said to me, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. She said, what did you go do? And I said, what do you mean? She's like, well, when you stepped out, what did you go do? She's like, you were only gone for a few seconds. So I know you didn't go to the bathroom or anything like substantial, And I was like, well, I said, to be honest, I stepped out to pray because I felt like I needed guidance in this situation on how to best serve you, because that's what my business is really supposed to be about. She got super emotional, and we've had this great relationship ever since. And my point is that reaping and sowing has a lot more to do with money, and it's more about how you treat other people in situations. Those relationships that you are able to build and to nurture, they reap, they sow. You get that harvest you get is the sowing is way more bountiful than you could possibly imagine. And it's so minimizing to even just say it's fruitful. I mean, it's like a whole field, right? I mean, this particular thing has come back to me in so many different ways. So anyways, my idea, my philosophy around this really is rooted in scripture, in that passage. And like you said, sometimes you throw seed and it doesn't grow. And I think that the lesson there is you have to be aware of where you're at, right? Sometimes we put ourselves in situations where we just want to throw seed, right? It might be about the gospel. It might be about our business. It might be about our kids and some accolades that they've accomplished. But those can be lost on concrete if it lands on concrete, right? As the parable goes, or firm soil. But if you're in the mission field, and I mean this from a business standpoint as well, if you're out there and you're nurturing those relationships and you're not just necessarily throwing seeds, but you're out there turning the soil, you're doing the hard work, you're prepping, right? That we talk a lot about preparation and what that means, and there's no fruit without preparation. And so in your business, I think that what I'm trying to say really badly is that you have to be prepared. And so when it comes to working with a small amount or nothing, right, from a client perspective, when I encounter a client who I'm initially talking to, and I know very quickly in the conversation that they don't have the resources to afford what I normally would charge somebody, as an example, right? But I know in their heart they want to move forward. There's an opportunity for me there to be honoring to them, and that does not mean giving it away for free. It doesn't even mean giving them a discount. Sometimes reaping and sowing has more to do with, Sarah, this might not be the right time for you and I to be in a relationship. But here's another alternative. Here are some solutions. Here are some things that I could tell you right now will help us get to that point eventually, right? And so, again, by sprinkling on people and giving them little pieces, you get to do a couple things. You get to see how serious they are, and you also get to teach. You get to educate someone on the value of being resourceful, of taking God's providence in what they have and figuring it out, learning to find a way to make it happen. Because like my mother said, there's always a way. There's never an excuse, right? It's crazy how this stuff all comes together, right? And so I often find myself in a situation like that, and I don't want to say no to people. So I have to find constructive ways to pour into them where they're at. Another version of that same scenario could be, and has been for me, taking a deeper look at what they're doing with their money, right? Like I said earlier, a lot of times isn't that you don't have enough, it's that you're just not responsible with how to spend it. I met with a client earlier today, just a few hours ago, right before I called you this afternoon. And I sat down and they were like, how much is it to do that one program? Because we kind of got to that point. And I told her, I said, this is how much it costs. And, this is what it's going to break down to, weekly, monthly, whatever you want to do. And we had to have this conversation about what could she give up, right? And sometimes that's the cost, right? And so there's another lesson, sometimes it's not fair, right, to give things up and to have that idea of a sacrifice in order to accomplish the bigger thing. And we all want it faster, better, bigger, right? We're in this world of instant gratification, but I always have to bring myself back to the example of Christ. He gave up everything and didn't have to, so that debt, right, that cost could be realized, it could be fulfilled. And who are we to sit around in misery and say, oh, I can't afford to do it, I don't have the money to do it? Look, you're somewhere along the line, you're going to have to feel the pain. And I got news for you. If you're an entrepreneur, it's almost every day. It's not an easy thing to do. Going to the cross was not an easy thing to do, but it had to be done. So the question really comes down to reaping and sowing. What are you willing to put out there and sacrifice in order to have that harvest later on? That's what it comes down to. So if you're not in a place where you can do what it is you want to do right now as you're listening to this, oh, that's great in theory, dude. You got a business. You're doing it. Sarah's doing it. Yeah, we have both sacrificed to do it. We continue to sacrifice to do it every day. When was the last time you sacrificed? Really sacrificed? Said, I'm not going to go get my Froyo. I'm not going to go have a $7 coffee from Starbucks. I'm going to give up Netflix for 6 months because it costs whatever it costs now, $20 a month. It used to be $4.95. Like, what are you going to give up? How great of a sacrifice are you willing to have in order to achieve the thing that you want to achieve? That's what it comes down to. And again, it's modeled all throughout Scripture. Why are you so complacent to sit where you're at and not willing to take the steps that you know in your mind you have to take? God gives you those ideas for a reason, and they are not to die with your body when the end of the time comes. You are supposed to take those ideas and move them forward. Only you, nobody else. And so that means it's up to only you and nobody else to figure it out. Figure out a way to get that harvest to come in. Sorry,
Craig,
another tangent.
I'm really appreciating this conversation because it is really helping me look back at my own life and some things that I have done at different points. One of the things when I came into Achieve that I was very timid about doing is that I had been growing my businesses, and like you, I had been doing different things on the side since I was about 14 years old. And the beginning, literally an old metal Band-Aid box. The money would go in there, right? And if some money needed to go out, it came out of the Band-Aid box. This was all very, very incredibly simple, but it worked.
I love it.
When I came to working with Rob Raymond and Achieve, he said, Sarah, I'm not going to have a conversation with you until you have done your business plan. And there was zero oxygen in the room. I was like, because that I could easily sit down and write, that I had already written. They were on my website. They were different places. Parts of it were just so simple. But the absolute black and white of where are you financially and where do you want to be financially, that was something that was scary for me because I knew where I was. And I had this fanciful idea of wouldn't it be nice someday to be at a different place with it? But that was a complete, there was nothing that was connecting this with this over here. And so that whole idea of coming and really having those serious inner conversations. And if you have somebody that you can talk to about what you're working on, just to have it. When I was mentoring new teachers, one of the things that they told us was the incredible value of somebody being able to hear their own words and hear their own thoughts. So as we were mentoring brand new teachers, it wasn't always that we came in or that I came in that I had the answer, whatever that happened to be. But that process of having information that was out on the table in front of us, we could look at some things together and then begin to have conversations and ask questions. We weren't trying to come to this is how we're going to do it from now on. We were trying to come to a place of, I've seen this, I've tried this, let's maybe consider some different ideas. And the same thing was just so true for me with writing the business plan for the first time, where it was, I needed to come in and have those conversations internally with other people and be vulnerable in that space and say, what is it that I need to do, be, or become? What needs to die off in my life, right? What no longer serves me, or it serves me, but no longer aligns with where I'm going? What pieces there do I need to energetically let go of and feel that loss and be okay with that loss and not stuff it with more activity, but in that space of that and go, this is what it feels like to, in the springtime, to begin to till the soil in order to plant for a much bigger, greater harvest. And so that was part of just my own personal growth and story in that. We have just a couple minutes left. I would love for you to share any of your last thoughts, Craig.
Oh boy. Well, this has been great. And I think I could talk to you for hours. So, I mean, this is really energizing for me. And I guess the final thoughts, and you kind of just touched it too. There's a difference between being busy and being productive.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that has really come to the surface for me personally, because I've always been a busy person. Like I've always had a full calendar. I've always had things to do, places to go, all that. But what's really interesting, Sarah, is that now that I'm at this, I'm not going to say it's a pinnacle because I'm not even close to being done, but I'm at this new level, right? I'm at this new level. The place that I see it clearly right now is in my calendar. And I mean it in terms of my success. And it's
Yes.
not, for the first time, it's not that my calendar is completely full. It's that my calendar is full of income producing activity. And I
Yes.
heard it said decades ago. I want to say it was a Jim Rohn or a Zig Ziglar or one of those guys, but someone said, show me your calendar and I can show you how full your bank account is. And that might sound superficial to some, but what I've learned is that I have gone through an incredible journey from being busy to being productive. And what I'm excited about now is, they say that when I'm going to screw this saying up. It's when the student learns, the teacher appears, or so. You know the saying I'm talking about. But
When the
basically,
student, when the student ready, the teacher appears. Yes.
that's right. I feel like for the first time, I guess maybe I still have some stuff to learn. I couldn't even remember that, but I guess for the first time, I feel like the teacher in me is truly immersing. That I
Yes.
feel equipped to educate other people on these types of things. Because I think one of the things that most people struggle with is the idea of imposter syndrome, right? We hear about it a lot. And I don't even know if it's a real thing necessarily, but I think that there is some truth to the fact that when we get that level of education, that knowledge, and we have confidence because of it, that's the byproduct. We feel like we're more equipped and empowered to go and teach. And I guess my final statement is you should definitely go do that. I don't care what you're doing in life and in business, whatever you're doing, it is your absolute responsibility to become a master at it and to teach it to other people. Don't keep it to yourself. Knowledge hoarding is not attractive. You are given these things, and you don't have to worry about people stealing your stuff because nobody can do what you do the way that you do it. You are created in the image of God, and you are one of a kind. So go out and affect change for real.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Craig, for being here. I so appreciate it. And on that, I'm going to go ahead and finish up today. I just want to share with you just some quick thoughts here at the very end. Know that what you are working on that's placed in your heart, just like what Craig just shared, know that that is such an important thing and that you are the only person with that vibrational energy that can share it. And then, and I'm going to do this with you this week as well, we're going to lock arms on this. Do the uncomfortable activities that are the income making activities. For me, it's not dusting. It's not dusting my office. It's not any of those kinds of things. Those income producing activities are the things, places where we are interacting with people's lives and then making the ask. And so in this space, I'm super excited that you joined us this week. Thank you so much for being here with Simply Sarah, and we will see you next week.